Welcome to Show Culture Some Love, podcast brought to you by the Creative and Leisure Industries Committee of the Regional TUC, that region being London East and South East. And I'm here with Mr. Chip Hamer. Chip, you are co-chair.
I am co-chair of CLIC, as it's fondly known. Yes, indeed.
And how long have you been involved in CLIC?
Well, for about 10 years or so. And I'm a PCS member of about 25 years, and before that of other trade unions. I'm chair of the branch at the organisation that I work in, and the PCS trade union of which I'm a member. That organises itself by departmental funding. So we're funded by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. So here I am.
Right, brilliant. Well, should point out as well that there are 8 unions, I think, who are affiliated
Yeah, I think so.
to
Yeah,
CLIC.
yeah.
And that's going to be Equity, Artists Union England, PCS, of which you'll remember, BEC2, which I'm a delegate. We've also got Writers Guild of Great Britain, UCU,
Musicians Union, have we covered them?
and NUJ.
Yeah.
So that's the cohort
Yeah.
that sit on the committee.
Yeah.
And we try to get behind all the relevant campaigns and activities that we think will help the cultural industry in our region particularly, but where all our cliques are all over the country
They are
doing their work. So, I mean, what kind of work have we been involved in the past?
Well, it's interesting that sort of where I came in was the sort of Show Culture Some Love work, which was partially PCS driven. And the really interesting thing there is you think, what does a public and commercial services trade union have to do with art and culture? But as I say, we're that part that's funded by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. So our members work front of house in museums and galleries. So British Museum, British Library, the Tate Galleries, the National Gallery, the department itself, all those people have PCS members doing the front of house, back of house, the more mundane work, the less glamorous work. They tend, although they may be creative people themselves, they tend not to be the people who are paid to do creative work, but to do the everyday work with which art,
The hard grind and keeping it going.
can't function without that sort of work.
Yeah.
And the key point there for us is that those people, if they're getting paid to do that work, their pay terms conditions of service needs to be as good as it possibly can be. And we'll campaign for that. And if they get in a dispute with their management, then we'll support them in those disputes.
Of course, when people think of culture and the arts, you're thinking about the artists and the performers and the actors and the writers and all those people who are actually doing the creative work that perhaps attracts attention. But underneath all that, there is a massive infrastructure that needs to keep all these institutions going, and it's your PCS members that are doing that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there are a lot of people who work in that sector who are highly motivated to do that work. And whilst the management of those institutions can take advantage of that motivation, that's not inappropriate. But what they shouldn't do is take advantage of those people. So these aren't charities; these are institutions which are funded by government to a certain extent, and need to be and people that work there need to be treated properly. That said, a lot of people who work there create art and culture on their own account. That's just not what they do for a living. And that whole axis of how they might transition and how funding might be allocated, all that sort of stuff, is another part of the work that CLIC does.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as someone who started out as an actor and a writer and then has got into moving behind the camera, I've had to cast my net quite wide over the years in order to keep my head above water.
Exactly so. So a few years ago now, but we organised a series of annual events called the Secret Art Show, where we got people who were trade union members in the museums and galleries who were all also artists in their own right to put together portfolios, and then we would show them what, like, it was a one-off event, and we had performances and the art on show and all that sort of stuff, and sold some of those artworks and paintings and all that sort of stuff, and asked people to pay to come into the event,
Mm.
and used all that money to go into strike funds,
Right.
hardship funds for the union. And we did that for half a dozen years very successfully. And, the art and the performance that was presented was top notch.
Mm.
Um, just because it's not being done commercially primarily doesn't mean that it's not top notch work.
No, not at all. And how did you, in particular, get involved in your union activities to begin with as a PCS member?
Since I was a teenager, I'm talking about the end of the 1970s, and a very interesting time in terms of music and politics, put it that way. And I was particularly involved with the Red Wedge in the middle of the 1980s, and, worked alongside people who were doing the lesbian and gay supporting miners work, and the Wapping dispute and the build up to the elections in that time. Didn't really go our way a lot of the
Mm.
time, but still, we made the effort. And the interesting thing there was the bringing together of music and art and entertainment into the political world, getting a voice in the political world and getting a voice for the political world into the arts and creative stuff.
Mm.
So that was very instructive and informative. I learned quite a lot out of that. And then when I myself ended up working at the turn of the century in a small arm's length body doing back of house work in culture, media, and sport, um, the first thing I did was to join a trade union. Because, I had the words of Billy Bragg ringing in my ears. He'd never forgiven me if I hadn't, you know. Uh, I joined a union, and within a year there was a bit of a problem at work, and I put me out into the ring, and I've been branch chair ever since. And then you get involved at regional level, and then you get involved in national level. Last year I was on the national executive committee of the PCS. Not this year. We'll see about next year. And what you do it for is to try and make a difference. But I myself, I, I'm not a poet, but I write poetry. So I'm not paid to do it.
Yeah.
But I'll bring that into the work I do for CLIC, and I'll bring that onto Picket Lines as well, something we might come on to a little bit more
Yeah,
later.
yeah, sure. I'm quite interested though when you say I'm not a poet, but I write poetry. In so much as if you write poetry, I would reckon
You're a poet.
you're a
Yeah,
poet.
yeah, yeah. I know. I mean, increasingly there are people having a good stab at making a living as poets.
Mm.
Um, uh, Good luck to them. It's very difficult.
Mm.
Traditionally, poets starve to death in freezing garrets,
They
don't they?
do. Yeah.
So people are having a good go at it. Uh, Personally, I don't think enough people would want to buy my stuff in order for me to make a living out of it. But to be fair, people teach and they do workshops and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's not me.
No.
And I could think of one or two other people who are musicians or artists, all that sort of stuff, who would rather earn a living doing something else
Mm.
and then have a side hustle where they bring their art
Mm.
into their politics.
Mm.
I'm wearing a Joe Solo t-shirt. He's a washing machine engineer, but he does all kinds of things for a loose organisation called We Shall Overcome. He's
Mm.
10 years old now,
Mm.
but it raises money for food banks, all that sort of
Mm.
stuff. It's musicians and performers, and it's a brilliant model, and it runs very similar to the sort of thing that lesbian and gay supporter minors do, which is to take what they're doing
Mm.
and to make it something that has a social model to it.
Yeah. No, brilliant. And it's interesting about this whole thing about having to have a second string, having to work a job that will bring you in a regular wage in order for you to pursue your passion or your interests. Everybody has this battle to try and be true to their art and make stuff, create stuff, bring something into the world, or give people pleasure through what they do. And yet it's just not valued enough. And I mean, part of that is the reason that we're always battling cuts in general, because there's still not that status received from on high that culture is bringing in the bacon. Whereas, in fact, the fact that we're often quoting a pound spent invested in the cultural
I
sector
think
brings £4
I,
back
I,
home.
I think that's a really important point. So there's a lot said about that culture and artistic endeavour um, should pay for itself. Should be commercially viable, and I'm not sure that's necessarily true. Uh, but when you get down to it,
Mm,
and you look at the facts and figures, which are sound and solid, robust and proven, the cultural and leisure industries in this country
mm,
bring in more money pound per pound. It's about 3 or 4 to 1,
mm.
right? Once they're underway. But how do you get underway? Now, in my day, you used to be on the dole.
Yeah.
It's the clash model. There's still
You practice your art while
yeah,
you enjoy
there's
the dole
a
and
labour exchange on Lisson Grove and a cafe up the road where Joe Strummer met Mick Jones.
mm,
It's there. It's real. It happened. Try doing that now?
mm.
No. Try doing that while you're doing an art degree or a sociology degree. Well, you're going to be tens of thousands of pounds in debt, right?
Yeah.
So the imperative is there to go out and get a paying job. Um, but so we're going to miss out on some of those things unless there's another funding route, right?
Mm.
So there needs to be some way of making sure that people who've got the talent and sometimes don't have the talent but have the oomph, right, have the opportunity to do those things. There's an opportunity cost thing there.
Mm.
And the other thing that's important there, of course, is equal opportunity. So we know, again, it's a truism, but these days, the world of rock and roll and art and theatre, right, tends to be more dominated by the privately educated than ever it used to be, right?
Yeah.
And that's because some of those other avenues have been cut off, right? So, and we know what that means in terms of class, but also race and religion as well, and that can't stand. That can't stand. We've got a Labour government now. They need to do something about it.
Mm.
Get stuck in, Lisa and Andy.
Yeah, and I mean, in a large part, that's what CLIC is always trying to do by backing campaigns and initiatives coming from unions that make up the committee and those outside the committee, because culture is such a far-ranging thing. Twitter is culture,
Yeah,
whether we like it or
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
As
Well, I
as
mean,
well as ballet.
yeah, I mean, people can, you know, I think we can use social media if we're careful,
Mm,
and we'll move on to that as well. I'm sure at some point. It's not. It's it's only a bad thing if it's used badly. It can
mm,
be a good thing if you use it well, but you
mm,
do have to be careful.
mm,
But I think the thing there is, you're talking about the fact that people in the arts industry, if they're not allowed to start,
mm.
right, then and it's not something that's in their background, they don't know how to get going,
Yep.
and letting them get going, right, is what we should be campaigning for. It's interesting that education in the arts is something that this last year CLIC has been working on with the National Education Union and the Arts and Minds campaign.
Yeah.
And it's been a bit of a crisis in arts education. And we're pointing out there that there need to be pathways from education into the arts and that those are increasingly in short supply.
Mm,
We need to make sure that they're in better supply. So that's what we've been doing this last year.
yep.
And I think in coming years, we may look at how that works on the other end of it, which is using arts and sport as well for social inclusion, which is the other side of the coin.
Mm.
So it's heads heads you win, tails we win there, because if we get that right, we can increase opportunity and increase social cohesion. But that's not what we're doing this year. This year we're doing something else.
Yeah. What's that?
This year we're looking at arts and the environment. There's been one or two rock and rollers have been thinking hard about it.
Mm,
And we know that in the museums and galleries, there's been a big campaign that we've helped to run alongside
mm.
to try and get the cultural institutions to divest from petrochem and the oil industry and fossil fuels, all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And it's a difficult one. But it's definitely something, we're going to grab the zeitgeist here, and that's the function that we're going to have. We're going to have an open meeting later in November, we're going to ask people to come along and contribute and say where they're at. But apart from anything else, we need to map where we're at. So some organisations where there are union branches in the sector have got environmental strategies already, and they're making progress. And we want to map those. And where there aren't any, we need to try and campaign to see if we can get some established. But we know with those kind of institutions that sometimes having a strategy is merely an excuse to do very little at all, right? So what we want to see is if we can, we've got a campaign document called Making Culture Ours, and we're going to write some environmental stuff into it, add to it, and then hopefully make reporting back on progress against those strategies, part of our annual work. So we'll see how we do. But the first thing is to map what's there, to campaign for more, and then see if we can report back on progress. Because
to roll it into the manifesto.
Yeah. Because there's no art on a dead planet, is there?
True enough, and sell it off. Yeah, that's great, and that's going to be the main focus of CLIC's attention in the coming year.
This year.
And we'll be reporting back on that in due course. Keeping up with those developments.
Yeah. Look for the Show Culture Some Love hashtag and the Making Culture Hours hashtag, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Great. What's ongoing now for you in PCS? What are you currently dealing with, especially in the culture sector?
Well, right now, there's a strike at the British Library.
Right.
And the British Library is part of the PCS DCMS group. And that dispute is largely around pay. There is pay restraint and has been for the last 12 years or so. And you'd like to think the Labour government would have lifted it, but didn't seem to have. So members have voted overwhelmingly to take action. And there'll be picket lines of 8 to 12 every day during the week and rallies and all that sort of stuff. We're hoping people will come online. Again, the hashtag is PCS on strike. So we're looking forward to seeing if we can move them on that. And at the moment, there's a strike ballot at the Tate Galleries. So the PCS members of the Tate Galleries,
Right.
Tate Modern and Tate Britain. So we're hoping that's going to get over the line. The ballot closes mid-November, and the earliest we'll be able to take action there would be towards the end of November because of the trade union legislation. But it's worthwhile saying that a lot of the stuff that got this going was there was a long dispute at the National Gallery where PCS members there were threatened with being outsourced and all that sort of stuff. The gallery assistants and security at the front of the house, and that went on for 100 odd days, and all kinds of people came in behind it, and it became a bit of a cause célèbre, and some good stuff kicked off out of that, including to a certain extent the Show Culture Some Love campaign, which we've been talking about,
which is a sort of big umbrella for a lot of most of what we do, really. For sure. And then on these picket lines, I know you're actively involved. You're a very active union member. You're out there a lot of the time helping support your members, rallying your members. This is where your "I'm not a poet, but I am" comes in, because you have put together a little collective, if you like.
We call it a squad.
You call it a squad
for very good reasons.
The Poetry Squad, which is called
Poetry on the Picket Line.
Poetry on the Picket Line. Fascinating. Brilliant.
So we do get called the Picket Line poets and all that sort of stuff, but Poetry on the Picket Line is the handle on the various social media things, and that was one of the things that started off on the National Gallery.
Right.
Because I was on the picket line reasonably frequently, and you go along and you have to say a few words on behalf of the branch. So you say, on behalf of the branch, we'd like to give you our full solidarity, and keep on keeping on, all that sort of stuff. And it gets a bit old day after day, particularly if you've been out for 111 days. So being somebody who's always put pen to paper and written verse, I wrote a verse for the dispute.
Oh yeah.
And I read it on the picket line. And it went down pretty well.
Yeah.
And the next time I came back, people said, "Have you got any more poems?" I was like, "Okay, I better do some more poems." And then it became a bit of a thing. And then we organised a poetry gig outside the National Gallery, and it happened to coincide with the last day of the strike. So 111 days, and in the end, management folded. But we'd already arranged to have this poetry gig with a little mic and a PA and everything. And I got a handful of people I knew who were interested vaguely in poetry and politics, and some bloody good poets came along. And we did a little gig outside the National Gallery, and it was great fun. And one of the things we discovered was that, and you should have known, you only have to have somebody on a microphone in Trafalgar Square, and people come up and stand around. So we had a strike fund bucket, and we passed it around. And by the time we finished passing it around, we had a couple of £100. We thought, okay, we've got some money for the strike fund. That set something going. The other thing that happened, of course, is that was the same day that the strike folded. Lots of people were quite bemused, entertained, interested in the fact that there were poets reading on a picket line. It's not something they'd seen before. So there's a couple of videos went out, a little bit. There was something in the Morning Star, I think something in the Guardian. It got a little bit of a head of steam behind it, which again was the second thing. But then we would be asked for quotes and all that sort of thing. So it occurred to us that after 111 days of strike action, after 110 days of strike action, the management hadn't moved. Jeremy Corbyn had got involved, John McDonnell got involved, Diane Abbott had got involved, all the great and the good from Parliament had got involved, all kinds of actors and artists and museum illuminati, people that you've heard of in the world of the arts turned up on the picket lines, all this sort of stuff. There were articles in the Guardian, it was on the news. 110 days of this, and management still hadn't moved. Right, 111 days they moved. What had happened? There'd been some poetry on a picket line. That's what happened. So although it didn't happen like that, we were spinning it. One or two poets on a picket line, and Bob's your uncle.
Exactly that, because for me, I was thinking about this whole idea of politics and art. It's quite easy to be sort of apolitical if you're involved in the arts. Sometimes, obviously, there's a lot of liberal thought that goes on in the arts by default, although that's less and less the case, it seems to me. But I think ever more with the increasing, the death by 1,000 cuts of all these great cultural opportunities that people are being robbed of. It's more and more important to start marrying the politics back with the art. But what I'm trying to say is, I think poetry on the picket line is a real, golden example of where politics and art meet.
Showing that you can make a difference and that you can have a conscience. I think that's really interesting. I mean, very quickly, as soon as we saw that there was some traction behind this, we are fortunate to be hooked up with people who could do this work. So we had a website and we had a logo, and we got offered a book deal. Then, having become a thing, we said, okay, we're gonna push it. We can still turn up on picket lines and people go, "You want to do what? Read poetry?" Right? And then they do get it, right? But the idea is because it's novel, you take a photograph or a little bit of film, all that sort of stuff. You put it out on the social media. You find out if the union concerned or the union branch or the strike have some kind of a handle on social media. Whether there's a link online to a strike fund, right? And you stick it out there, right, with the strike fund tagged so people can see it and contribute it if they want to. You send something out there with a little bit of content on it, even if it's only just a picture, right? And then, we've got friends who will retweet. So Lesbian and Gay Supporter Miners, Billy Bragg, John McDonnell will retweet, the Green Party will retweet, depends, where the dispute is. If we can get a little bit of viral stuff going, and only, a small percentage of people see the strike fund link and dob in, then we've made a bit of a difference. It's helped get the voice of poetry onto the picket line, and the voice of the picket line into poetry. The very act of reading a poem on a picket line is political, right? So you can be writing about trees and flowers, daffodils, if you like, or you can be,
As you often do.
yeah, the voice of reason. Or you can be writing about your own personal situation in relation to where you're living or what's happening to your family, all that sort of stuff. And that is political if it's read on a picket line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? And if people are engaging with that, then there's no downside to it. I've stood on picket lines in the early morning. It's not very pleasant. It's a bit rainy. Some people want something to boost their spirits.
Do you know the poem you read outside the National Gallery that very first time? Can you remember what it
Yeah,
was?
yeah,
Have you got it
yeah,
with you?
yeah. I do. So this is the poetry on the picket line anthology, and because I'm not daft, this is mine, published by Culture Matters.
And they're great. I mean, I've got these, and they're very passionate poems, to say the least.
Let's do a class act then. So I think this is the poem.
Mm.
It's the thin veneer that's so insulting, as if we should be grateful that they feel the need to lie at all. Decisions have been taken. Still, they are consulting their key stakeholders, the ones that fall between the quite unloved, unlucky, and the unfortunate but undeserving poor. They'll play no real part in the big debate. Why do the haves need so much more to motivate them, whilst the have-nots apparently need so much less? How did we get ourselves into this sorry state, and can we trust the ones who promise to extract us from this mess? There seems to me to be one fundamental fatal flaw, a massive fault line in their master plan. They want it both ways, want to get well in the good times and the bad. They want you with your head down, working for the man. They want to stop you spotting you've been had. While those who want for nothing, they want more. So now with government by clever knotting of the old school tie, and they'll do very nicely thank you out of boom and bust. So ask yourself, what does this signify? Is it a nasty accident or a betrayal of trust? The fact is, this is something that we've seen before. This is a class act. That's what this is. This is war. There you go.
Yeah, brilliant. Never a true word. And we've got to have another one. What else you got? What you got in that tome of yours?
Okay. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to the next page in the book actually, and talk about education and public services.
Mm.
Um, and see what you think of this one. It's my sister used to work in a nursery where they had to put up and pat down at the end of every class. Underfunded, I think.
Yeah, this is great.
They deserve better, that service.
Absolutely.
Pack away the nurseries into a soundbite. Close hospitals. Turn fire stations into luxury flats. The city alchemists have done their best to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, but that's the beauty of it. Base metal from the common wheel can still be conjured with. A mark is stamped upon the penny post, and pennies pinched from public sector plebs will reap a handsome dividend. Deliberate denigration softens up the target, undermines educators. Healers, helpers, first responders are parcelled up and privatised. Infants in incubators, undergraduates, infirm incontinents in care homes are carried off by speculators, unencumbered by the smallest moral compass. The profit margin is their only friend. So pack away the nurseries, the books, the toys, the instruments of learning and of fun. Pack up the little girls and boys into an education system sabotaged and broken, quite undone by petty dogma, self-interest and greed. Don't say that you weren't warned. Unpack a future for them, strange and dark indeed.
Yep. Yeah, great. I think that poem's great, and so apt, and it is a universal theme, sadly, and they're the kind of themes that, yeah, collectively and individually, people about and against, but as CLIC, as a committee, are trying to make a difference on all the time.
Yeah, I
And
think so. And, most of these poems were written under a Conservative government, and you'd like to think with a Labour government, things would be getting better. And it's not to say they're not getting better, but they're not getting better fast enough, right? Not by any stretch of the imagination. And the danger is if that you take hope away from people, then they turn to darker alternatives,
mm,
right? And that's where we come on to the idea of social cohesion. People on the left, including those who create art and culture, need to make sure that there's an alternative, and that's what people like Poetry on the Picket Line and We Shall Overcome, giving them another plug, are looking to do, to say that the solutions to the problems that we have come from the left and not from the right. And we need to be quite clear about that, because that's a big risk right now.
Mm. Yeah, well, it's a struggle, but it's good to have you on side, Chip.
That's one of the places where I came in, to be fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, that's great. And, we're going to be coming back, sadly, I think, to some of these themes again and again and again over if we as we keep talking on these podcasts. But, the work continues, and all power. So thanks for coming in. And I can't let you go, though, without one cultural recommendation.
You might be lucky to get away with one.
Yeah, just the one.
Well, I mentioned Joe Solo earlier on, and Poetry on a Picket Line are putting on a benefit at Betsy Trotwood later on this year with Joe Solo,
Okay.
Jeff Silk, Steve White, the his family are
All
playing.
right. Okay.
But it's sold out.
Okay.
But the movie that I was talking about that you hadn't seen, I'm asking you to go and watch tonight, see if you can pick it out, is Matawan.
Matawan. Who directed that?
Written and directed by John Sayles, 1987. Unbelievable, nearly 40 years old. It seems like yesterday when I first saw it, and it had a big impact. And it's about striking coal miners in the late 19th century in the States.
Okay.
And it's about the strike and the efforts to break the strike and the efforts to keep the strike going, and how the community came together there. And there's a particular scene in it about worker unity across the racial divide in the States, which is extremely moving. So keep your big box of man-sized Kleenex next to you, because it really lifts the spirit. But you might find you've got a better grit in your eye. So Matawan.
The opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the TUC or any of its affiliated unions. Thanks for listening.